Once it's done, well, there you go. Once it's done, it'll say it's going to record and it'll tell you at the end.
Perfect.
Once the recording stopped, it consolidates it and provides it to you at the end.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, good to see everybody.
Yes. So how's was it? Like I always get it wrong. VAWMA? VAWMA?
VAWMA, yeah, like the Voluntary Association for Work and Mutual Aid. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
a great little nonsense word that we get to define, and hopefully, will it rolls off the tongue. Makes for a relatively nice looking,
Mm-hmm.
um, logo.
Yeah.
The V's, the A's, the W's, and the M's, they all kind of flow into each other, so
Mm-hmm.
it's very
Mm-hmm.
pleasing to look at.
Excellent.
But the idea, as I kind of like presented the last time, is
Mm-hmm.
basically to create a template for creating a network of worker directed, community owned
Mm-hmm.
businesses that basically designed to keep as much as possible in the local economy. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. So that's very much what CCA is all about, but
Hmm.
we're looking at it a very specific sector, the care sector. That said, the care sector is also fairly broad. We're looking at daycares, we're looking at home care, we're looking at developmental care. Those
Right.
are sort of the three big ones that we're looking at. That can obviously expand, but not at the present time. We're specifically looking at home care, personal support workers being the main focus because they're the ones who are the largest group in the greatest demand,
Hmm.
followed by daycare workers, followed by development support workers. The main issue, and this is the big issue we're finding, is that we can find personal support workers who would be happy to engage with the co-op model as worker co-op owners. But what we're having difficulty with is the client base. And the reason for that is not because people aren't out there in need of the care, it's the cost, right? There is what's known as family managed care. It's a government program. But even those people working for government in the local health integrated networks don't know a great deal about it. It's much like going into your employment department, right? And asking for help and them not knowing what programs exist or how to actually help you.
Right.
So we kind of struggle with that because home care obviously is somewhat expensive, right? Government is happy to provide money for long-term care facilities, literally billions of dollars, which will eventually be available in 2028. But they're not as organized around home care. So that's what we're struggling at the moment, developing that client base.
Would imagine like the cost is probably prohibitive for most people, especially if they're paying out of pocket for services that they require, but otherwise,
Mhm.
can't get access to.
Exactly. So we've addressed some of that because care is on a spectrum, right? You've got some people who just need a little help, maybe can't drive anymore, maybe can't clean the house as well as they used to anymore, to those who need full-time 24/7 care. So that's the spectrum. So we've coupled with Fleming College to get student personal support workers engaged in the lower end spectrum of care, you know, driving people to appointments, picking up groceries. And then we have personal support workers all of the way at the other end of the spectrum. So we're trying to integrate that. Students obviously are therefore cheaper, right? Which helps the cost, but not by a lot.
Mhm.
The funny part.
Yeah. And just as you're talking, I'm reminded of a friend of mine who is in England, so very different system, but she is a client of a home care cooperative, which is
Mhm.
worker run. And so I'm sitting here talking to her about, spouting off all the wonders and wonderful things about cooperatives. But as the client of this care company, she's not having a great time. And under having learned what I've learned about how things operate and how things uh function within the different kinds of cooperatives, it makes sense to me that if you have a worker directed, like worker owned cooperative that's in it solely for the workers' benefit, uh, it's going to be skewed a little less heavy towards what the client needs are.
Mhm.
And I don't believe that she's like a part owner in that business, so she's obviously not. Um, uh, has no recourse other than to write the manager of
That's
the
right.
workers and say, "Hey, I'm not having a great time," and they're like, "Well,
That's nice.
right."
Yeah,
Whereas if she had
yeah,
a vote on the board or something, they might
right.
pay attention to her a little bit more, sort of thing,
Well,
right?
that's why with the Cooperative Care Alliance, it's a federated cooperative. So
Mhm.
members can be the local worker cooperatives, but the CCA is actually has support members on the board, family and friend caregivers,
Mhm.
who can then have a say in the policies and procedures that are operational at the local level. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So the CCA then it's the I like the idea, like the word federated there. I've
Mhm.
heard it thrown around different places,
Mhm.
and I'm not too sure I would be able to give a textbook definition for what it is though. But the
Oh,
idea that it kind of describes is like it sounds like you've got a bunch of different cooperatives that are all kind of
that's
like
right.
working together under like a larger umbrella.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Federated cooperative is essentially a cooperative of cooperatives.
Right.
At least it has memberships that are co-ops.
Hmm.
In CCA's approach, we've taken to have individual members, care workers, as well as local care co-ops. So that
Okay.
makes us federated, as well as support workers. Sorry, supporting members.
Okay.
So the family, friend, caregivers, or essentially anyone who wants to have a say in the care sector, the development of the care sector.
So like client membership, client
Exactly.
class sort of thing. Okay.
Those clients who have the ability to actually have a say can become members. Uh, those who have dementia or other issues, obviously, family and friend caregivers are hopefully
Right.
going to be their voice. Yeah,
I recall reading through the Ontario cooperative law and reading through the whole sections where like it allows for delegates to and yeah, that makes sense as to why they would allow for something like that in certain circumstances like these, right?
that's right. That's right. Yeah. But like I said, we're struggling because it is a public funded sector, sort of quasi public funded
Right.
sector. And they refuse to adapt their approach from one of, hey, stuff all the old people into one place and deal with them that way, as opposed to a home care, which is actually cheaper. Long-term care costs about 800, 850 per day, whereas home care is about 400.
I seem to recall under the Wynne government here in Ontario, they implemented a lot of programs of like home care stuff. So I wonder if there's like in Ontario access to like government funding for projects like this that could help offset costs.
If you know any, I'd love to hear about them.
Hey, right?
Most of
Oh,
them,
damn.
most of them I hear is like I said, you go to the client and the client struggles to figure out the very basic. Where do I start?
Yeah.
And all of them start with an assessment, and that can take weeks. Well, at this point, if you're asking for an assessment, the person asking is usually exhausted,
Yeah.
at their wits' end, and then they're told, okay, good. Now let's start jumping through some hoops to see whether or not you qualify for care, and qualify for funded care. It can be
Hmm.
quite problematic.
It should be like for my mind, it should be free at the point of use and then like single payer, at the
Mhm.
end of it all. And of course we'd need some actual like socialist politicians to implement something like that. And yeah,
But
I'm not
don't think
holding
we
my
have
breath.
them at the moment.
No,
Yeah.
no.
The other thing we are working on is a cooperative development fund, but that's a long way off.
Yeah.
Arctic Co-ops Limited, I don't know if you're aware of them, ACL. They're a federated cooperative.
Okay.
They operate the 33 co-ops in Canada's north.
Okay.
And they started with a development fund of about $10 million. And from that, they developed these 33 co-ops.
Hmm.
Plus, the fund itself has grown to over 50 million in less than 10 years. Like that's pretty impressive.
Uh,
So
yeah.
we're attempting to do something similar, but we have to get government to basically jump on board. And as you mentioned, our government isn't exactly, focused on that sort of thing.
No,
But
I remember, wasn't there something in the last budget about like an increase of like a couple of $1 million in the co-op investing in co-op sectors? But
yeah,
I'm not
there's
sure how to get access to it.
yeah, it hasn't because it hasn't arrived yet. You should also look, if you're interested, is the Social Investment Fund. That's coming out soon. I'm not sure exactly when, but it's approximately $755 million to promote social enterprises and co-ops, obviously. And that's something, if you're looking at VAWMA to basically sort of get kickstart,
Hmm.
that's a really good approach because you could basically say we're developing entrepreneurial tools, marketing tools, things of that nature, educational tools to help develop the co-op sector in these areas. That's something you might want to look at.
That is I was in the what are they called? The Pollinators of Change Network.
Oh, right.
They've got a course that I'm enrolled in, and they did a thing today on financing.
Hmm.
And so they had a couple of different credit unions represented, providing stuff. They did mention about this fund, the social financing fund. I got a copy of it tucked away in my notes. Uh, Very good stuff. And it's for like what we want to do, like our current best foot forward plan is to create, pardon me, to start off by creating like this cafe libre kind of idea, like uh coffee shop, try and run it 24/7, so we didn't need a staff of like 25 people or so to get it up and running off the ground. And then from there, once we establish that sort of foothold cornerstone business, we then go expand to like the next thing, which like obviously we need someone to watch our kids while we're at work, so we'll create a little childcare cooperative. And then we need someone to get us to and from work, so we'll create a cab company. And then from there we'll then start creating like a bus network up and down the Saugeen Peninsula, so we can start creating more little of these little cafes and like the little urban places, or the quasi urban places. When I
Mm.
say urban, we're talking like 10,000 people in the location, or
Yeah, yeah.
maybe 1,000 people if you're lucky.
Right.
But if we were to create like these little networks of like little coffee shops or something that were up and down the peninsula, and then ran like a bus or a cube truck, or not a cube truck, but a cube van
Mhm.
that was designed to carry people up and down the peninsula a couple times a day, and then had next, stage 4, stage 5, we start doing our own little mini Uber sort of thing, where we get people in like the local area, since it's 100 kilometers between Owen Sound and Tobermory.
Yeah.
And you don't want to necessarily have somebody in Owen Sound coming to pick up somebody in Tobermory. But if we had somebody in Tobermory that could pick you up from like where you are on the farm, bring you into Tobermory to the coffee shop where you can wait for the bus that'll then come bring you down at Owen Sound, where you can do your shopping for the day and then come back. And the whole thing costs you like maybe $40, as opposed to like the $60 it would cost you to drive there and back again in gas or whatever. That's kind of where I'm going with this idea. And then as we gain more and more people coming to our shops, advertise that, are you love your work but hate your boss? Talk to us about how we can facilitate starting your own business within our network, sort of thing. Not so blunt and straightforward. We'll be a little
Yep,
more
yeah,
subtle about it, but that's where we're going with it. And
yeah.
so when people come to our coffee shop for the coffee in the morning, they're, instead of being bombarded with corporate advertising to buy more stuff, they'll get that plus the subtle little hints that you can be a part of our network and take part in the surplus that we all generate together, sort of thing. So, and then just grow from there until we create
Yeah.
enough businesses that we can just sidestep the whole capitalist thing altogether.
Uh, I, I just want to make a comment about what you're saying. I think it's still good to benchmark what the uh potentially just like try to figure out what the average sales are
Mm.
within Owen Sounds for a coffee shop if you want to start this co-op network, because you can't, for you to just throw out 24/7 coffee shop with 25 employees, the first thing that came to my mind is that's not a feasible business. Not even under a free market structure can a structure like that exist. So for me, like you have to think about like the reality of what
Mm,
current. So for me, like because again, a co-op is still a business, right? You want to make the
yes.
survivability first. So I would think more like 6 employees under a certain range that works, right? Pragmatically, because right now, I I think you just have to be realistic with what the density of population and what other competitors are doing in the region before
Mm-hmm.
jumping to that far. Because the scaling of one industry, this multi-stakeholder model, where you want to have these other businesses come in, you have to kind of grow within the.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just throwing it out because
Mhm.
I definitely agree within the idealism, but we have to make sure that the right structures are in place first.
And I'm
Yeah.
open to like any potential business. Like this is like a
Mhm.
template thing that we've thrown in to just kind of like say, well,
Yeah,
this is our cooperative structure idea, and this is a business that we can throw in. And a lot of it is napkin math. So
yeah,
like 25 people is like it gives us enough employees to run the place 24/7 without anybody having to be there 7 days a week,
Mhm.
and enough of us to take time off. That sort of thing.
Have
Uh
you looked at the Canadian Workers Co-op Federation? They
Federation.
have
Yes.
they have
Hmm.
some technical grants for feasibility studies that you might find helpful. Uh,
Okay.
so I think it's only like 3,500 or something like that, but it's enough to at least get you a sense of, for example, how many coffees do you have to sell in order to,
Hmm.
generate surplus, or how many danishes, whatever,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Or
Right, right.
yeah, and you could basically get someone to look at the various businesses from your coffee shop to
Yeah.
childcare to your cab company and your, well, I guess let's call it transportation company,
Yeah.
right?
'Cause
Uh,
that's what it eventually turns into and such, right?
right, right. And they could then, you could then take a look at, okay, where is the best place to start?
Yeah.
How is the best place to start marketing this so you get the foothold of maybe the cafe, then a growth into childcare or Uber,
Hmm.
depending on what the feasibility study comes up with, right?
Right.
Because what we could do, and here's another option. So you could take that $3,500 and leverage it versus what's known as a My Tax grant, which would then allow you to hire a graduate student.
Mm.
They could actually do a full-on review of your area and the economic potential of this opportunity, right?
Right.
And they come up with at least a plan. You may not agree with the full plan, but at least to give you some insight into what population do you have and how many times do they drink coffee and eat danishes or whatever,
Exactly.
right?
Right.
That
And
might be something you could do.
again, if it turns out that a restaurant, something in the food industry, turns out to be as is, legendarily, known, a risky
Mhm.
business venture, and there's something that we can much better invest in, with much fewer people, then sure, I'm open to anything.
Because
Really.
another, I don't know how many coffee shops there are in Owen Sound. I really don't know.
Now, off the top
Uh,
of my head, there's like 4 or 5 Tim Hortons in like the immediate, like say like a 10-kilometer radius.
okay, all right. No specialty coffee shops, no
Oh,
special.
they're no, they're downtown. You've got like at least three sort of like non-corporate owned
Okay.
coffee shops sort of thing. We're
Another
not in the downtown though. We're in a different
that's
zone
that's
area.
fine because here's a really cool idea that could
Hmm.
also be explored. A coffee roaster, a
Hmm.
coffee roaster. The individual private coffee shops basically are the members, along with individual um, uh, clients, consumers,
Hmm.
and you basically go into um, small batch coffee roasting. It's been successful in Edmonton,
Yeah.
uh, and in Guelph, Ontario here as well. So
Okay.
something to think about. But my suggestion, I think this might be a decent path forward, is reach out to CWCF and see about their grants. I think they still have some.
yeah.
Then we could leverage that. Sorry?
Yes, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, then we could leverage that against a MyTax grant and get a graduate student for about 4 to 6 months. I can look at this and provide you with a business plan, or at least the beginnings of one.
So,
Right.
so I was gonna say, James, yeah, the person who deals with the
Kenta,
CWCF grant is,
your mic is doing something weird,
Mm.
can you hear me?
You kind of
like
sound
a
like Darth
robot.
Vader. Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe just
Oh,
unplug it and plug it back in real quick.
oh, yeah, you're right. It wasn't plugged in properly. My bad. Can you hear me now?
It's no change, but we're just gonna go with it.
Oh, okay. No, not good.
What, I
Give it a
think it's
go.
worse now. Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say Kay Grant deals with the CWCF grant, and I think she can help you out there.
Yeah.
I'm sure you can get it within a month.
Yeah.
I'd be interested in helping you out, James, because I'm also in Toronto right now.
Oh,
And
nice.
well, that was my point. Also, what I wanted to say is that I think the viability of having a child care and coffee shop together in the same premise is something that I might find interesting. So
Mhm.
it's like utilizing a space with multiple, like similar low cost in like sectors, because you don't want to be like coffee roasting like with other high capital. I mean, they're not their capital. There's other capital intensive projects, but I think focusing on low cost, publicly good businesses is like a sound business. For example, in like Toronto per se, you're gonna find a coffee shop that actually is a barber as well.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
like
and a
that type of
laundromat.
so those type of concepts I find more fascinating because you have certain type of businesses that we need functionally need as a society, right? So if you can
Mhm.
merge stuff like that all in one space, then you know the probability of people coming there is needed because you have the needed things. So if you're dropping your coffee off at the co-op, hot shop of the coffee is part of the cooperative, the parents will support that coffee because it's part of their co-op. So, and I'm getting a haircut there, then I'm getting co-op. So these are like publicly needed infrastructure in one place.
Yeah.
So I think like focusing on that, I could definitely see like in the end you'll have 24 employees because you're providing services that society needs. So I think like thinking on root level is very foundational for like a multi-stakeholder co-op in a rural area to create that community. So like
Mhm.
what is it, so for me, I think I would be interested in focusing on that with you as well. Like how do you define a community for a rural community? What has always been community?
Mhm.
Barber shops have been community because you have dialogue, coffee shop as well, childcare is the parents all get together. So how can
Right.
we, and how can the
Right.
zoning laws change in Owen Sounds to make sure all this can kind of exist for a co-op in like a building? So that would
Mhm.
be fascinating. And then also, if you want me to connect you with graduate students, I mean, obviously I have my strong relations with University of Toronto. So for me, I can talk to some people within Boise who do co-op research. So you want to find somebody who can do a business analysis as well as having some understanding of co-op. So there could
Yeah.
be students here, grad students that you're looking for that I can help you find as well.
Mhm.
Nice. I am going to be super excited to share this with Rebecca and start coming up with a plan for what we can do to like put our feet forward, I should say, and really try to come up because like again like I don't want to create something that becomes like a money sink that ends up putting a little weight around everybody's neck and like pull everybody down. I want to create something that will create money and then use that money to then create more jobs for more people that will
Mhm.
create more
Mhm.
money and that like just grow it.
The,
you know
the, the
um
allocation of profits within the community, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. And like I've been learning and dreaming about how to utilize things like sociocracy as a vehicle
Mm.
for accomplishing group consensus-based decision making, where possible and as much as possible.
Mhm.
I'm excited, for the possibility of what we could do with like community investment projects that we can then turn around and ask our membership, where do you want us to invest in the community? Give us projects to invest into, and then we'll put money towards it based on what you guys tell us where to put it towards to. So one half of this is incredibly idealistic, and the other half of it is like, okay, but we need to make money so that we can do the idealistic stuff.
Yeah. Exactly. But that's the very basis of co-ops. They came out of the utopian tradition of changing the world, but they're pragmatic in that, hey, how are we going to go about doing it? And interestingly enough, the idea of a meeting place, be it a coffee shop, barbershop, coffee shop, daycare, whatever, was the very basis of the Rochdales. They created a meeting place for their community members to engage with one another, to understand, where do we put our money? Where do we develop our community? So I think that's brilliant. And I'd love to help out with it. I think it's a great idea. Yeah. So
well,
do you have a sense of a time frame for any of this?
So part of why I've been pushing for like the Cafe Libre ideas, because like that's the first out of a multitude of different potential business ideas that have sort of like risen to the top, and it could theoretically, like we could start smaller, like with fewer people, but the space we have in mind, it's a specific location. It's currently empty and it's very expensive, regrettably. They're wanting $13 a square foot for 2,763 some odd square feet, which works out to be like 35 or just under 35,000 a year. I'm hoping it's a year, because if it's a month, all this whole idea is just gone. But if it's
a year, lot of coffee.
Yeah, if it's a year, then we can potentially make a go of it. But if we're in for like to just rent a place so we can have business, or lease a place so we can have a business, if we're going to be in for $35,000 that year, I want to run it for as long as possible, be open for as long as possible, to maximize the amount of money we can make. I know that Onsan used to have 24/7 coffee shops that were like mom and pop greasy spoons, that were like places that people would go to, and we had a nightlife. Now we don't, and I don't know if that's because the city can't support that sort of thing. I know that the Tim Hortons are always advertising, for shifts overnight, but the general consensus is nobody wants to work. And my general response to that is, well, they don't want to be wage slaves. They want to work. They just don't want to be, they don't want to work for, for Tim Hortons. They don't
well,
want.
That's the sort of stuff that I think a graduate student can dive into for you.
Okay.
And get some real good detail on the community and its needs. Because they can even begin at a very basic level and saying what's of interest to the community, and outline the 3 or 4 best choices. And if cafe is one of them, wonderful. If daycare is one of them, wonderful. But it's something that can be at least assessed, and you can go forward with some information.
Well, I'm sold. Right. How do I get one of these people? It'll be, if it was just up to me, it would be at the how would you describe this? It would be the at the discretion or the threat of my ADHD. But with between Rebecca and I and a few more people that are on board with this idea, we might be able to get enough of us together to get the force behind this and make it happen.
Yeah. Well, with Canada, you suggested that some graduate students, you would need to know a prof to supervise them.
I think there's people that I could probably connect with. There was a prof at Oise. I forgot his name. I think it's. I talked to Hazel from CWCF quite often, and she told me to reach out to somebody who's at Oise right now who does co-op research. I'm sure that he would be able to guide the right person, but to be honest, you're kind of looking for somebody who can do like a sector feasibility within a rural setting, kind of understanding, it's kind of like knowing, how many coffee shops exist, how many people probably drink, it's like understanding the statistics, and then they can kind of figure out what the market would look like. but at the same time, yeah, let me think on it. I personally think the idea of having, a, like if a building allows it, like zoning and everything, like, yeah, I would just throw in as much needed businesses, community needed businesses in it. And if it's possible, I think that would be
Mhm.
fascinating. Again, having like a barber shop and a coffee shop. Again, it's been this, it's a
Mhm.
trend that I've been seeing for a decade now, where they're
Mm.
Oh
trying to
yeah, same. Yeah, yeah.
maximizing the use of a space to generate as much revenue. So, and if childcare can also somehow fill in that, that would
Mhm,
be
mhm.
interesting.
And it just kind of works into like what I want to develop as a business, where it becomes like the kind of place that you want to go to as a kid, which of course draws the parents, which of course draws money, you know.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well,
Um,
if you struggle with getting a researcher to take on the MyTex project, I'm happy to do that. We just need a graduate student to run with it. That's fine.
Yay.
what kind of graduate students are you looking for? Like, does it have to be within a certain
Nope,
department or?
nope. Can be in any department, as long as they're willing to work on this particular project, right? Which is essentially, as you said, a sector study, low and sound related to a multi-purpose work environment, developing businesses that are cooperative in nature.
Yeah, let me think
Yeah.
about it because I mean, I'm hoping to find somebody within Ontario
Yeah.
or because GTA,
Yeah.
then they can drive to Owen Sounds to kind of do
Yeah.
obviously
It's
groundwork as well.
depending on where
Um,
you are in the GTA, it's anywhere between like a 2 hour to like 3 hour
Yeah. Yeah.
drive.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
If
so
we're
yeah,
lucky, we could find a master's student who comes from Owen Sound.
that
That
would
would
be
That'd
be
great.
be amazing.
good.
And connect me with them because I'm ravenous to find more people that are into
It's
co-ops in this area.
exactly right. So I think that's an excellent way to start.
Mhm.
Reach out to Kay. Kenta, you can take a look at possible graduate students
Yeah,
if you know any.
yeah,
And
I can definitely kind of I just need to think about it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
And
Yeah,
Kay was with the Canadian Worker, right? Okay,
Canadian Worker
Uh,
Co-op Federation,
yep,
CWCF.
yeah,
She's really nice.
yeah.
good. I think I connected with Hazel once after a session or something, and I'd kind of downloaded the whole VAWMA,
Yeah.
idea in like huge, and I think she just kind of like, oh, it's one of those people, and kind of, uh, moved
Oh,
on with greater
Hazel's
business or something, but or maybe I
Hazel's
got lost in,
so busy. Hazel is
yeah,
just so busy. I mean, CWCF covers all of Canada, and it's
yeah.
essentially two of them, really. It's Kay and her. I think maybe two
Mm.
Yeah,
and a half, I think at most,
they've
right?
they seem to have rehired few
Oh,
people,
oh,
but
good.
still small. Yeah, there's a specific I'm so bad. There's a specific professor who's part of the Rotman Business School, but does co-op related research in Toronto. So she's part of U of T, University of Saskatchewan, the Canadian
Nice.
School, the
Yeah.
Canadian Co-op. I forget what it's called, but um, uh, so I'll reach out to her and see who she can recommend. So there's also so I'm gonna talk to her. I
Sure.
haven't reached out to her this year, but she's a good
Mm.
person.
Yeah.
But
Nice.
not. Uh, I'm sure you might know her. Let me just look at. Sorry, I'm not the best person with names, but
I am probably the worst person with names. Terrible. Well, that's all right. I mean, this gives us at least a
oh
decent
yeah,
plan to get.
Dion Polar. Dion Polar. Do you know her?
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Dion
Good.
Polar is
Good.
who I was thinking of. Yeah.
Hopefully she's not too busy.
Mm.
No, she's pretty good. She's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My tax requires investment from the industry, which would be VAWMA, right? But that would come from the grant
Hmm.
from CWCF.
Now, do we don't need to be incorporated to apply for the grant, do we?
Oh, don't believe so.
Oh, that would be good
My
because we're
tax
not at
is
that point yet.
my tax is pretty open.
Okay.
My tax is pretty open. If it if it is an issue, CCA can jump in and be your surrogate for that
Okay.
to get information on that, because we're incorporated and we could basically say this is the project we want to run to understand more for VAWMA. That could work
Well,
as well.
it's interesting. And I'm sure you'll appreciate this, but one of the things that we've discussed as another possible entry point for VAWMA is in like the healthcare thing with the focus specifically on type 1 diabetic care.
Oh, okay.
Which is of course like a bit of a niche but needed care network, as my friend Rebecca can attest to, as a type 1 diabetic
My
person.
son's a type 1. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and it's the amount of, from her experience and her description of it, like it's luck of the draw if you get a doctor who like actually understands type 1 distinguished from type 2, where you don't have to actually, dispel certain myths and stuff with them. And so it, for Rebecca, like her need and her desire is like that we would have something that would cater to her needs as a type 1 diabetic, be a one-stop shop where you can go for an endocrinologist along with a nurse practitioners or whatever you need, sort of thing. PSWs, home care for like the older diabetics that are like dealing with like missing limbs and things, just that's one of the other things that we've kind of looked at as a possible insertion point. And then again, maybe we use that to then start Cafe Libre, and then to move on forward from there. And it's all.
I think we focus on the meeting place concept, however that formulates itself, be it a laundromat cafe, laundromat hair cutting place, daycare laundromat, whatever. But that's something that a bit of research would help us
Exactly.
understand. And that's where that graduate student would come in very handy. And they can be quite good. And the information we would gather would then help lead us towards creating that business plan that you're going to obviously want to develop going forward, in terms of not only the cafe slash daycare, but also your overall VAWMA approach, right? Like how to get to that larger multi-stakeholder cafe, childcare, transportation organization. Yeah.
Yeah, and then building on, like, yeah, like I could go on with like the potential. Yeah.
No, I think that's a great approach. The graduate student could also look at how to engage with community members to define how we allocate any profit and define what businesses they run towards. That could also be helpful in the long run as well. Anyway, I hope that helps. Sorry, I do have to run.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. Thank you
Way
so
too
much
many things on the go. Hopefully, we'll chat again soon. I hope.
I would look forward to it. I would definitely, certainly via email, if not via Zoom again. Would love to, because like I still have questions about like at what point and do you pay taxes, and like on what amount and where and all that other fun stuff.
Oh yeah, those are far off yet, so we're all right for them.
Yeah, exactly.
Getting to the incorporation stage would probably be the first, but we have to develop that business plan. Which means we need data, and data will come from the grad student, which will be great. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you again.
Well, thank you. Feel free to reach out anytime. Take care, everybody. Thank you.
Live long and prosper, everybody.
Bye.